In the mist-shrouded mountains of 15th century Wallachia, a figure emerged whose name would become synonymous with terror: Vlad III Dracula, more infamously known as Vlad the Impaler. Ascending to the throne in 1456, he ushered in an era of brutality that left an indelible mark on European history. The Italian chronicler Antonio Bonfini once wrote, "He was a man of incredible ferocity and unheard of cruelty, a scourge to all mankind." Born in November or December 1431 in Sighisoara, Transylvania, Vlad was the second son of Vlad Dracul, a member of the Order of the Dragon, a knightly order dedicated to defending Christianity against the Ottoman Empire. The family's name, Dracula, meaning son of the dragon, would come to embody Vlad's reputation for spreading terror. His birthplace, marked with a plaque, still stands today in Sighisoara's citadel and now houses a restaurant with Dracula-themed dishes. Vlad's early years were turbulent and marked by tragedy. In 1442, he and his younger brother, Radu, were sent as hostages to the Ottoman court of Sultan Murad II in Adrianople, modern-day Edirne, Turkey. During this captivity, Vlad developed a deep hatred for the Ottomans and adopted a ruthless approach to power. It was here, likely, that he first witnessed the cruel practice of impalement. Upon his return to Wallachia in 1448, Vlad found his father and older brother murdered by local nobility. His father had been buried alive by the nobles of Targoviste, while his brother was blinded with hot irons and also buried alive. Taking the throne in 1456, Vlad began a reign renowned for its severity. His preferred execution method, impalement, earned him the moniker of the Impaler. This horrific punishment involved placing victims onto sharpened stakes, often in a macabre display around towns or on hillsides. Reports suggest that he sometimes rounded or lacquered the stakes to prolong on hillsides. Reports suggest that he sometimes rounded or lacquered the stakes to prolong the agony of his victims. One of his most infamous acts occurred on St. Bartholomew's Day, April 24, 1459, when he invited hundreds of nobles to a feast in Targoviste, only to impale them on the spot for suspected disloyalty. Chronicles estimate around 500 victims, though the numbers vary. Vlad then forced the surviving nobles on a 50-mile march to Poenari, where they were made to rebuild a mountaintop fortress. Known today as Poenari Castle, this stronghold stands on a cliff overlooking the Argeș River, a grim testament to Vlad's paranoia and brutality. In 1462, Vlad's cruelty extended to Turkish envoys, whose turbans he nailed to their heads when they refused to remove them, citing religious custom. According to Greek historian Laonikos Chalkokondyles, Vlad justified his actions by saying, "I have done this to teach you to respect your customs, even in foreign lands." Vlad's scale of atrocities was staggering. Some sources claim he impaled 20,000 people outside the city of Brasov in 1460. A 1521 German pamphlet describes an instance where he ordered the impalement of 600 Transylvanian merchants in a single day, allegedly as revenge for Brasov's support of his rival and as punishment for economic exploitation. Vlad's cruelty, however, had a strategic purpose. His reign coincided with the Ottoman Empire's advance into Europe, and he saw himself as a defender against Islamic expansion. In 1462, when Sultan Mehmed II led an invasion force of 150,000 men into Wallachia, Vlad employed scorched earth tactics. He poisoned wells, burned crops, and conducted night raids to confuse the Ottoman forces. The infamous night attack occurred on June 17, 1462, when Vlad, disguised as a Turkish soldier, led a raid that nearly reached the Sultan's tent. As the Ottoman army approached Targoviste, they encountered Vlad's Forest of the Impaled, a gruesome display of 20,000 corpses on stakes. The sight was so horrifying that Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople, reportedly turned back in disgust. A chronicler described the scene. the Sultan's army came across a field with stakes about 3 kilometers long and 1 kilometer wide, bearing the bodies of men, women, and children, some 20,000 of them. Beyond the battlefield, Vlad was infamous for dining among his victims, sometimes dipping his bread in their blood. In another tale, he sent the noses of Turkish prisoners back to the Sultan, along with a boast of his victories. Known for his strict enforcement of honesty, Vlad reportedly placed a golden cup in Targovishta's central square as a test of integrity. So intense was the fear of his punishment that the cup remained untouched throughout his reign. This tale of Vlad the Impaler is immortalized in a poem by the Romanian poet Mihai Eminescu, who wrote, "In Targovishte Square, a golden cup stood tall. No thief dared steal it there, for fear of Vlad's thrall." Vlad's reign was not uninterrupted. He was deposed in 1462 and spent years imprisoned by King Matthias Corvinus of Hungary, held in the Visegrad castle and later in Buda. During this captivity, Vlad met his second wife, thought to be a cousin of Matthias. In 1476, he briefly regained his throne, only to be killed in battle later that year near Bucharest. The exact circumstances of his death remain unclear, with some accounts suggesting betrayal by his own men. His head was allegedly severed and presented to Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II as proof of his death. Vlad's legacy is complex. In Romania, he is often seen as a harsh but just ruler who protected his people from foreign invaders. His image appears on Romanian stamps, and statues of him stand throughout the country. Yet to much of the Western world, he remains a symbol of sadistic cruelty, his name forever linked to Bram Stoker's fictional vampire, Count Dracula. Inspired in part by Vlad's reputation and name, Stoker's 1897 character immortalized the Impaler's legacy in popular culture. Vlad's life continues to captivate historians and the public alike. Although not historically linked to Vlad, the famous Bran Castle has become a popular tourist site as Dracula's castle, while Poenari Castle, which Vlad actually occupied, offers a more genuine connection to his story. Archaeologists still search for Vlad's tomb, with some speculating it may be located in the monastery on Snagov Island, north of Bucharest. Romanian historian Neagu Juvara wrote, "Vlad Dracula was a man of his time, a time when life was cheap and death omnipresent. Yes, he was cruel, but he was also a defender of his land and faith." In history's annals, few names evoke such a mix of fascination and horror as that of Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus. Born on December 15, 37 AD, in Antium, Italy, Nero would become Rome's fifth emperor, ruling from 54 to 68 AD. His reign is remembered not for triumphs, but for its indulgences, cruelty, and the mark it left on Western civilization. The Roman historian Suetonius wrote in The 12 Caesars, "Nero spared no expense and dreamed of the impossible." Nero, the last of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, took the throne at age 16 after the mysterious death of his great-uncle and adoptive father, Emperor Claudius. Rumors of matricide surrounded his rise, as many believed Nero's overbearing mother, Agrippina the Younger, had poisoned Claudius to secure her son's position. Tacitus reports that Agrippina used a dish of poisoned mushrooms to end Claudius's life, a detail that has captivated historians for centuries. This incident was only the prelude to a rule defined by bloodshed and madness. The early years of Nero's reign, known as the Quinquennium Neronis, or Nero's 5 good years, held promise. Guided by the philosopher Seneca and the Praetorian prefect Burrus, the empire enjoyed relative peace. Nero reduced taxes, provided aid to disaster-struck cities, and even allowed slaves to file grievances against unjust masters. However, a power struggle simmered between the young emperor and his domineering mother. In 59 AD, this tension culminated when Nero ordered Agrippina's assassination. Tacitus recounts the botched attempt to sink her ship in the Bay of Naples, followed by her brutal murder. Facing her killers, Agrippina reportedly cried out, "Strike my womb," a reference to the child who had now turned on her. This act of matricide shocked even the hardened people of ancient Rome, marking a turning point in Nero's rule. Freed from his mother's influence, Nero's behavior grew increasingly erratic. He indulged in extravagant displays, opulent feasts, and artistic pursuits, often at the expense of the state. Nero's notorious artistic ambitions included long recitals of his poetry and musical performances. Spectators who dared to nod off or attempt to leave were met with severe punishment, and soldiers reportedly sealed the doors to prevent anyone from escaping. Suetonius recounts that desperate audience members would feign death or even endure childbirth to escape Nero's self-indulgent performances. Nero's obsession with his artistry peaked in 67 AD when he delayed the Olympic Games by a year to participate. Despite falling from his chariot and failing to finish, he was awarded victory crowns in every event. But Nero's most infamous act came on the night of July 18, 64 AD, when a great fire erupted in Rome, raging for 6 days and 7 nights, and reducing much of the city to ruins. Though he was in Antium when the blaze began, rumors quickly spread that he had ordered the fire to clear land for his architectural visions. The image of Nero playing his lyre as Rome burned, though likely a myth, captured public imagination and symbolized his apathy. Some accounts suggest he even watched the flames from the Tower of Maecenas, reciting verses about Troy's fall. After the fire, Nero launched a grand rebuilding program, including his lavish Domus Aurea, or Golden House. The palace, spanning nearly 200 acres, boasted gilded ceilings, precious gems, and a massive 120-foot statue of himself, the Colossus Neronis. His infamous rotating dining room, which sprinkled guests with perfume and flower petals, became legendary. To fund these extravagances, Nero debased Roman currency and raised taxes, placing further strain on the populace. Seneca remarked of Nero, "He robs, he plunders, he despoils, nothing does he deny himself, nothing does he spare." Seeking a scapegoat for the fire, Nero turned his wrath on the Christians, ordering gruesome persecutions. Tacitus describes them being torn apart by dogs, crucified, or burned as torches to light the night, marking one of the earliest recorded attacks on Christians. It is believed that during this persecution, the apostles Peter and Paul were martyred in Rome. Nero's cruelty extended to his own family and mentors. In 65 AD, he allegedly kicked his pregnant wife, Poppaea Sabina, to death in a fit of rage. That same year, he ordered his former tutor, Seneca, to end his life over conspiracy suspicions. Seneca complied stoically, comforting his weeping friends as he bled to death. His paranoia grew to include anyone he deemed a threat, including his stepson Rufius Crispus, whom he reportedly had drowned by slaves for play acting as a general. In 65 AD, the Pisonian conspiracy, a plot to assassinate Nero and place Gaius Calpurnius Piso on the throne, was uncovered. The emperor responded with brutal retribution, forcing prominent Romans, like the poet Lucan and the writer Petronius, to take their own lives or face execution. The purge was so extensive that Tacitus likened it to a massacre of the nobility. Despite his reign of terror, Nero cultivated a populist image, mingling with commoners and sponsoring public spectacles. He even participated in chariot races and gladiator contests, shocking Rome's elite but delighting the masses. As his paranoia grew, so did discontent among Rome's elite and military. In 68 AD, Gaius Julius Vindex, governor of Gaul, openly rebelled. Although Vindex's forces were defeated, his defiance sparked a domino effect. Galba, governor of Hispania, declared himself emperor, and the Praetorian Guard in Rome abandoned Nero. The Senate, emboldened, declared Nero a public enemy. Facing inevitable defeat, Nero fled Rome and on June 9, 68 AD, took refuge in a villa belonging to his freedman Phaon. In his final moments, he struggled to find the courage to end his life, reportedly lamenting, "What an artist dies in me." With his secretary's help, he drove a dagger into his throat, ending his reign. Nero's death marked the end of the Tullio-Claudian dynasty and plunged Rome into civil unrest during the Year of the Four Emperors. Yet, even in death, his shadow loomed large. Several impostors, false Neros, claimed to be the emperor and gained followings, particularly in the eastern provinces. His reign remains a cautionary tale of absolute power corrupting absolutely. His legacy became one of excess and tyranny, with Juvenal writing, "Is there any wickedness alien to that monster in Nero?" Rome's Colosseum, begun under Emperor Vespasian, was built on the site of Nero's pond, symbolically returning to the people what Nero had claimed for himself. The phrase, "Nero fiddling while Rome burned," endures as an expression of irresponsibility in times of crisis. Ivan the Terrible, Russia's reign of terror. In 16th century Russia, a figure emerged whose very name became synonymous with terror, Ivan IV Vasilievich, known as Ivan the Terrible. Born on August 25, 1530, near Moscow, Ivan became Russia's first Tsar in 1547, bringing with him an era of unprecedented brutality and paranoia. Russian historian Nikolai Karamzin would later write, "The name of Ivan the Terrible froze on people's lips." Ivan's early life was marked by tragedy and turmoil. Losing both parents by age 8, he witnessed brutal power struggles among the boyars, the Russian nobility. These formative years of violence and suspicion would shape Ivan's reign, eventually earning him a reputation for merciless rule and a lasting place in history. From early in life, Ivan the Terrible's rule was defined by intense violence, fear, and autocracy. Born on August 25, 1530, Ivan IV Vasilievich grew up amid the bloody power struggles of Russia's noble boyar class. At just 16, he became the first to be crowned Tsar of all the Russias in Moscow's Dormition Cathedral. Ivan's early rule was marked by progressive reforms. He expanded Russia's territory through successful conquests, revised laws, and convened Russia's first parliament. However, the death of his first wife, Anastasia Romanovna, in 1560, plunged him into grief and paranoia, fueling suspicions of treachery that turned Ivan increasingly violent. In 1565, he established the Oprichnina, a paramilitary organization that operated as a state within a state, unleashing terror across Russia. Wearing black and carrying brooms and dog heads, his oprichniki tortured and killed those they deemed traitors, particularly boyars whom Ivan held responsible for Anastasia's death. The massacre of Novgorod in 1570 epitomized this brutality, where Ivan's men allegedly killed up to 60,000 people. Not even his family was safe. In a rage, he struck his pregnant daughter-in-law, leading to a miscarriage. When his son Ivan Ivanovich confronted him, Ivan struck him fatally, reportedly crying out, "I've killed my son." Ivan's reign ended in March 1584, following years of war, poverty, and suffering in Russia. Despite his cultural contributions, including commissioning St. Basil's Cathedral and amassing a vast library, his legacy remains overshadowed by his oppressive rule and his violent temper. The chaos following his death led to the Time of Troubles, a period of crisis for Russia, with Ivan's name synonymous with tyranny. Future Russian rulers, from Peter the Great to Stalin, would draw from Ivan's centralization of power, echoing his influence and brutality in different forms. King John's legacy in English history is fraught with betrayal, cruelty, and incompetence. Born on December 24, 1166, John was the youngest son of Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine, originally never expected to inherit the throne. Yet, by 1199, following the death of his older brother Richard the Lionheart, John ascended to power, although his reign would soon be marred by acts that would render him one of England's most controversial monarchs. John quickly established his ruthlessness, capturing and allegedly murdering his nephew, Arthur of Brittany, to secure his claim to the throne. John's cruelty extended beyond political rivals. He was notorious for exploiting his subjects. In one infamous incident, he had the wife and son of his former ally William de Braose, starved to death after a fallout, a tale so horrific it spread as a cautionary legend. John also imposed unbearable taxes and fines, confiscated lands, and manipulated marriages to maintain control. He often exploited the Jewish community for revenue, once ordering a Jewish man's teeth pulled daily until he agreed to pay an imposed tax. John's attempts to regain lost French territories, particularly Normandy, ended in disastrous defeat. His poor leadership in battle earned him the derisive nickname Soft Sword. Back home, his policies led to resentment and eventual rebellion among his barons, who compelled him in 1215 to sign the Magna Carta, a document intended to limit the king's powers and uphold certain rights. Yet, John swiftly repudiated the charter, provoking civil war. In 1216, while fleeing rebel forces, John lost the crown jewels in a tidal mishap, a metaphor for his catastrophic rule. Days later, he succumbed to illness, allegedly after overindulging in peaches and cider. Although reviled in life, John's abuses ironically paved the way for the Magna Carta, a cornerstone of constitutional law. His disastrous rule, immortalized in literature and legend, serves as a cautionary tale of unchecked power and the enduring need for accountability in governance. Despite his numerous failings, King John's reign was not without its merits. Known as a friend to strangers and capable administrator, he introduced innovations in royal governance, such as the meticulous recording of royal finances in the Pipe Rolls. He also founded the port of Liverpool in 1207, granting it a royal charter, a legacy that, though often overshadowed by his infamous deeds, hints at a ruler with some foresight. As we reflect on the dark legacies of rulers like King John, Vlad the Impaler's terror-filled forests, and Nero's reign amid Rome's flames, we are reminded of history's most haunting examples of absolute power. Lord Acton's words echo powerfully. Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. These cautionary tales urge us to learn from the darkest chapters of the past as we strive to build a brighter, more just future. Thank you for joining this journey through the shadows of power. Until next time, may we keep our minds sharp and our morals sharper. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.